Ladies and gentlemen, we find ourselves at a moment of profound reckoning within the landscape of professional women's basketball, a moment where the grand promises of innovation are colliding violently and perhaps fatally with the cold, unyielding pavement of economic reality. We are compelled today to cast a scrutinizing gaze upon the unraveling narrative of the Unrivaled League, an entity that was heralded as a revolutionary alternative, a beacon of player empowerment, and a commercial powerhouse. Yet, as we peel back the layers of hyperbole and marketing gloss, what we discover underneath is not merely a disappointment, it is a structural collapse of such magnitude that it threatens to fundamentally alter the leverage and future of the athletes involved. Earlier today, we touched upon the initial tremors of this disaster, characterizing the viewership numbers as nothing short of catastrophic, a complete and utter failure of the product to capture the public imagination. But as more data emerges, as the curtain is pulled back by investigative reporting, the situation appears far more dire than even the most cynical observers could have prognosticated. Let us begin with the numbers, for in the realm of television and media rights, mathematics is the only language that truly matters. The ratings for Unrivaled have not merely dipped, they have fallen off a proverbial cliff, plummeting into an abyss from which recovery seems mathematically improbable. It is crucial to contextualize this decline. We are operating in a new era of television measurement, a system that, as we have observed across the industry, tends to artificially inflate viewership figures compared to previous years. Under this new metric, one would expect at the very least a plateauing of numbers, if not a modest optical rise. Instead, despite this systemic buoyancy, the ratings are down, significantly, undeniably down, versus the previous year. This is an indictment of the product so severe that it calls into question the very premise of the league's existence. When you have figures like Bonna Stewart forced to step into the public sphere and address these ratings, attempting to spin a narrative of survival, you know the panic is setting in. It is becoming increasingly clear that the leadership of this league operates under the delusion that television ratings are the lifeline that will sustain them. But who, looking at the landscape with a sober eye, could possibly have convinced themselves that 3-on-3 basketball, a format often relegated to pickup games and recreational parks, was a viable foundation for a major professional media property? The hubris involved in that calculation is staggering. But the unraveling is not limited to the abstract world of Nielsen ratings. We are now privy to a scathing, peel-back-the-curtain report from Front Office Sports, a revelation that carries with it a profound sense of shock. We must pause to appreciate the source here. This is a media outlet, along with journalists like Annie Constable, that has historically positioned itself as staunchly pro-player, often echoing the sentiments and narratives of the athletes themselves. For such an outlet to publish a report this damning, this openly critical of the league's operational failures, signals a seismic shift in the media landscape. It is as if the protective barrier that once shielded these ventures from criticism has evaporated, leaving the stark failures exposed for all to see. The report confirms what many of us suspected but can now state as fact. They simply cannot sell tickets. This is the very league owned and operated by two representatives on the Players' Union for the WNBA Players Association, the two vice presidents no less. We are witnessing a venture led by the union's own executive leadership officially spiraling down the toilet, a chaotic descent that undermines the very credibility of the individuals claiming to represent the collective financial interests of the player pool. Consider the optics of this failure. I read this report, and I must confess, the reality is even worse than the preliminary data suggested. This is, by every conceivable metric, an all-around total failure at this juncture. I have previously stated that I believed there was a slim, perhaps microscopic chance that this league could survive to see a third season. However, faced with this new deluge of information, I find myself unable to construct a logical pathway for its continuation. I simply do not know how it can survive now, unless there is the intervention of a benevolent investor, some financier who cares more about the social aspect of the project than the hemorrhaging of capital, and who decides to prop them up for another year purely as a charitable endeavor. The business case is non-existent. One must ask the difficult question, why is TNT going to continue to be involved in this? What is the incentive for a major broadcaster to tether itself to a sinking ship? We must look at the trajectory. In its inaugural season, Unrivaled was presented as a spectacle. It drew a sold-out crowd of 870 eager eyes. Let us pause on that number, 870. In the grand scheme of professional sports, that is a modest gathering, yet it was hailed as a triumph. Now, as we enter year 2, that sparkle has unequivocally worn off. When a sports media outlet like Front Office Sports writes what they just did, describing the scene with such brutal honesty, it is the equivalent of a warning siren blaring in an empty room. Uh-oh, indeed. The report paints a picture of desolation. The campus just beyond the Miami city limits was quieter during the opening weekend of the league's second season. The Fan Fest outside, intended to be a vibrant hub of excitement and engagement, was described less as a throng of passionate supporters and more like a loose collection of stragglers. Inside the renovated arena, the silence was even more deafening. The venue had added roughly 150 seats, bringing the total capacity from 850 to a mere 1,000 fans. Yet, despite this negligible increase in supply, the demand had evaporated. Seats were empty. We told you this. On that first day, when we flipped over to the broadcast, the visual evidence was undeniable. You could see the new seats, and you could see with absolute clarity that there were absolutely empty sections. There were seats that did not have people in them at all. This attendance failure exposes a fundamental truth about the star power in women's basketball. Outside of a distinct elite tier of roughly 5 players, names like Caitlin Clark, Aja Wilson, Angel Reese, Sophie Cunningham, Sabrina Ionescu, the drawing power simply does not exist to fill even a small venue. Outside of those marquee names, they cannot put 1,000 people in seats. This is the harsh reality that the WNBA players watching this channel, and we know that you do watch, must confront. If I were a player, I would be getting on the horn to Nneka Ogwumike immediately. I would be saying with great urgency, we are signing the CBA, we are signing it now. Because that footing, that alternative leverage you thought was so solid under your feet with Unrivaled, that was not a foundation, that was a rug, and it has just been pulled out from underneath you with violent force. Let us return to the television ratings, for they are the most concerning indicator for a second-year league. The numbers on TNT were lackluster, to put it mildly. Unrivaled's opening slate on January 5th averaged a mere 175,000 viewers across 2 games that aired on both TNT and True TV. But wait, it gets worse. Listen closely to this figure, for it is almost incomprehensible for a nationally televised sports product. The 2 True TV exclusive games on January 5th averaged 32,000 viewers. 32,000. I have produced independent videos this week from a home studio that have garnered more views than a professional sports league broadcasting on a cable network. That is a level of irrelevance that is difficult to overstate. The downward trend continued. Games on January 9th averaged 139,000 viewers across TNT and True TV. The 4 games which aired on January 10th and 11th averaged 71,000 viewers on True TV. They also had games air on HBO Max, though those numbers remain opaque, likely for good reason. This represents a steep, precipitous drop compared to the first season, when the league averaged 221,000 viewers on TNT, peaking at 377,000 for the final of the one-on-one tournament. We are witnessing an audience that has been effectively cut in half, if not decimated further. In the face of this statistical catastrophe, the response from leadership has been a masterclass in corporate denial. Unrivaled CEO Alex Brazell, when speaking to Front Office Sports on Wednesday, offered comments that seem entirely divorced from the reality we are observing. "We're building Unrivaled for a long game and we're confident in its outlook," she claimed, insisting they are keeping in mind the same core principles and goals we set forth when establishing the league. She went on to say, "We're proud of the products we're putting on the court each week, and we're going to continue growing our audience while showcasing the best women's basketball players in the world. Leagues aren't built overnight." While it is true that leagues are not built overnight, it is equally true that they can be dismantled overnight when the audience abandons them. To claim you are growing our audience when the viewership has just collapsed is a level of gaslighting that insults the intelligence of the observer. Your viewership just got cut in half. That is not growth, that is atrophy. The CEO and the league defenders will pivot, of course. They will argue that Unrivaled has other ways to make money, chiefly through ticket and merchandise sales. Yet, this defense crumbles under scrutiny. Despite the empty seats visible in Florida, a league person had the audacity to claim that opening weekend was sold out. This disconnect between the official narrative and the visual evidence is jarring. Furthermore, the league is banking on a tour stop in Philadelphia to pay dividends. This decision, however, looms as a potential public relations nightmare of epic proportions. The two-game slate scheduled for January 30th will be played at the Xfinity Mobile Arena, a venue with a capacity of roughly 17,000 to 20,000 fans. Oh my God, January 30th could very well go down as the most embarrassing set of days in women's basketball history. We must ask the question, what happens if they get 2,000 people in a 17,000-seat arena? The visual of a cavernous, empty stadium will be indelible. The league, predictably, has said the games are sold out and that resale prices are starting at $123 as of Wednesday afternoon. But do we buy that? Are they genuinely sold out? Or have resellers and potentially the league itself bought the inventory to mask the lack of demand? That is the burning question. I do not buy the official line for a second. A league spokesperson also claimed that merchandise sales from September through opening weekend were up 50% year over year, and that ticket revenue was up 40% for the opening weekend, thanks to added season games. These percentages, devoid of context and raw numbers, ring hollow when placed against the backdrop of empty seats and microscopic television ratings. Adding to the sense of a collapsing narrative is the sudden shift in player rhetoric regarding overseas play. The foundational selling point of Unrivaled, the very hook used to lure players and fans alike, was that it provided an opportunity for athletes to stay home, earn money, and avoid the rigors of overseas leagues. Project B showed up, people started signing contracts, and we were told this was the new paradigm. But now we are hearing a different tune. Listen to this quote from Alyssa Thomas. "I think there's a misconception that we don't want to play overseas. For me, it's about where the best opportunity is, where I can continue to grow my future. I enjoyed overseas." We have heard similar sentiments from other players recently. Wait a minute. This directly contradicts the big sales pitch we heard from Unrivaled. Suddenly, people love to see the world. They are blowing smoke up people's asses. The narrative has shifted because the economic reality of the domestic alternative is failing to materialize as promised. This turn of events, this public unmasking of the Unrivaled League's struggles, is having a profound impact on the broader geopolitical landscape of professional basketball. Honestly, getting this much publicity for their failure is the best thing to happen to Adam Silver, the WNBA, and the NBA owners. One can almost picture them sitting back in their offices watching this unfold and smiling. They are smiling because the leverage that the players thought they possessed, the threat of a viable alternative league, is evaporating before their eyes. This brings us back to the collective bargaining agreement. The WNBA players must understand the position they are in. Pretend, if you will, that you went on strike. Pretend there is an imaginary picket line. You better pretend your ass is walking right across that line and signing that CBA contract. You better go get your money while it is still there, because your little alternative, This 3x3 league that was supposed to be the hammer in your negotiation toolkit is fitting to not be around. That is the trajectory. I have brought it down to that level because the reality is stark. It is not going to be here. The speed at which this is falling apart is breathtaking. It is unraveling even quicker than I anticipated. The combination of abysmal ratings, phantom attendance, contradictory player messaging, and the looming embarrassment of the Philadelphia Arena show paints a picture of a venture in terminal decline. The spectacle of year one was a mirage. Year two is the harsh desert of reality. The implications for the WNBA negotiation table are immense. The owners now know that the players have nowhere else to go that can offer comparable financial security or visibility. The unrivaled leverage was a bluff, and the market has called it. The players' union, led by the very individuals whose league is currently spiraling the toilet, has lost a critical strategic asset. The NBA owners, the WNBA leadership, they see the empty seats in Miami, they see the 32,000 viewers on True TV, and they know that the power dynamic has shifted irrevocably in their favor. So, as we watch this situation develop, as we wait to see if the Philadelphia event becomes the public relations disaster we anticipate, one thing is abundantly clear. The landscape of women's basketball is being reshaped not by the success of a rival league, but by its spectacular failure. The players must read the writing on the wall. The alternative is crumbling. The money on the table from the WNBA, as flawed as they might think it is real. The money from Unrivaled is looking increasingly like a fantasy that is running out of time. This story is far from over, but the direction of the current is undeniable. We will continue to monitor the ratings, the attendance, and the spin from the CEOs and spokespeople. But the numbers do not lie, the empty seats do not lie, and the silence on True TV speaks volumes. I leave you with this thought. In the high-stakes game of professional sports business, you cannot fake demand. You cannot artificially inflate interest forever. Eventually, the market reveals the truth. And the truth for Unrivaled right now is a hard, bitter pill to swallow. Peace. I'm out. Till next time. Thanks for watching the show. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe.